Welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, where each episode brings you compelling conversations and stories designed to entertain, enlighten, and encourage. And now here's your host, Brian Sexton.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. You know what's really important to me when I do business with a company is trust and transparency. I've been telling you now for a good while about my buddy Damon Burton and his company, SEO National, because trust and transparency are just as important to them. You know, for the last 15 years, in the search engine optimization space, they have been leading the way and serving people tremendously well. Now, for those of you that don't know what SEO is, it stands for search engine optimization. It helps you show up higher on Google searches so that folks that are looking for what you have find you quicker. And you know what's really encouraging? More revenue, more sales, growing your business. Do me a favor, get in touch with Damon and his team today at SEO National at 855-736-6285 or go to SEOnational.com and get your free quote and tell them you heard it on the Intentional Encourager podcast. I hope you're ready, because here comes a dynamite conversation on the Intentional Encourager podcast. And welcome into the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'm your host, Brian Sexton. Thank you for joining us again today. Another podcast on the road. You can see by the background, but we're going to redeem the time because, again, what else are you going to do in the hotel room but record a podcast? And I can't think of anybody any better that I want to bring to you today on the Intentional Encourager podcast. He's an author, speaker, consultant, sales coach. I could probably take 10 minutes running down his list of accomplishments, but then we wouldn't have much time for conversation. And I want to bring to you the incredible Ben Gay III, who joins me on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Ben, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, Brian. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on. And I hope this is the first of numerous times we will meet.
Absolutely. I look forward to that. Let's start here. And I've started here just about every podcast. We as we record and release this, goodness, we're closing in on about 230 episodes of the Intentional Encourager podcast. Wow. And so we've done this. I've asked this question a lot of times. I don't want to ask it again because I like getting perspectives of people in different places. You're in California. As we record today, I'm in New York. I'm in Garden City, New York. But again, I've noticed some things around. I live in West Virginia. So take me through the last couple of years for you, how things have gone in your business, professionally, personally, things like that. What's one thing as we wind to the end of this pandemic and it looks like we are seeing the finish line, what's one lesson that you've learned the last couple of years that you will carry out of this time that we've had in the last couple of years?
Well, you're younger than I am, so this isn't my first rodeo.
Well, it's good hair. It's dyeing your beard. It's using a great product. My wife colored her hair, and I said, if you get to color your hair, I get to color mine. So
all right,
yeah.
You use that just instead or whatever it is that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wish they would sponsor the Intentional Encourager podcast. So then, I could say, look, I look good on YouTube because of Just for Men.
Yeah, there you go, Just for Men.
So if anybody is out there listening and you're an executive with that company, hit me up at the Intentional Encourager podcast at gmail.com. We have sponsorship opportunities available.
I have my handy tube of Ben Gay available.
Well, yeah, they need to pay you. They need to pay you naming rights for that. I think your grandfather was the original Ben Gay, wasn't he?
Well, he was Ben Gay Sr. And
yes.
Dad was Junior. I'm the third. There is a fourth. And but when I was coming up through school and so on, they spelled it differently. It was named after Dr. Jean Bengue. Bengue was his last name. But they couldn't get Americans, in particular Southerners. I'm from Atlanta. They couldn't get Southerners to say Bengue. They were saying Ben Gay. So finally, in 1960-ish, I think I was a senior in high school, they gave in and changed the spelling to my way. That's the same year, by the way, that gay ceased being just happy.
Yes.
So the product changed to Ben Gay, and gay took on a different meaning, and my life changed forever.
Yes.
I still remember 1960 clearly. Yeah. So anyway, I can't say that I've learned a whole bunch from it, because when you're older and you've been through other things, the civil rights movement, the Vietnam protests, I was conceived December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor Day. My father said 2 great tragedies befell America on December 7th. The Japanese struck Pearl Harbor, and I was conceived. But so, and I'm a student of history. So I knew, and this too shall pass. I spent most of my time comforting and counseling younger people who thought the end of the world was here. And so it reminded, rather than learning new things, it reminded me of a lot of things. And this too shall pass. Tomorrow, I remember not too long ago, a few months ago, that any song, Tomorrow, Tomorrow, was running through my head, because I was thinking, I'm tired of hearing about people whining about their plight in life. It's going to be over. It took longer than I thought. I thought it was going to be a three-month event, but that was it. And it sort of broke my pace in that, except for a few clients with corporate jets who flew them in to pick me up to take me back to their home office. Commercial airfare in the old days of 15,000 people in an arena went away. And when I say broke my pace, I mean that in a positive way. I don't have any deep yearning to spend long hours in airport terminals. I turned down one the other day, just a few weeks ago. They had weather problems, staffing problems, and so on. And I had just seen a thing on the news about some lady they were interviewing who just spent 6 hours in the Dallas airport. And so then the call comes, would you come join us? I think it was in Atlanta, maybe Savannah somewhere. And I said, no. I said, no, we haven't even told you the date. And I said, no, I'm not going to subject myself to that. I just had the good news as the problems at the airport were shutting down. I walked up to the TSA people and started taking my shoes off. And the guy said, sir, how old are you? And I told him, he says, you don't have to take your shoes off. You haven't had to take them off for several years. I said, is somebody supposed to tell me that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, from 65 on, you don't have to take off your shoes at the airport. And so it's a little more in my life, a little more relaxed than it used to be. I'm always being asked, because of my silver hair, when are you going to retire? Or if they don't know me, are you retired? And I think of George Burns, the old comedian, when they asked him, he was pushing 100, when are you going to retire? And he said, to what? I do what I love. I walk on stage and I tell jokes, and I get paid for it. At home, I tell jokes and I don't get paid for it. This is, and the roar of the crowd, so on. So nothing's going to change. Several years ago, when Gigi and I had been married just about the length of time you and Mrs. Sexton have been, 25 years now, the lottery had, or whatever it is, the super bingo or something, had gotten up to almost $1 billion. And Gigi bought 4 or 5 tickets, which is fine. It's fun, I didn't expect to win, but it's sort of fun thinking about it. And she said, if we won, we're just coming back from the convenience store, if we won, how would our life change? And I said, well, we're living where we want to live. We associate with the people we want to associate with. I'm doing what I want to do. I think you are. Let's see. I think I would go to the office and write the next newsletter. She said, with $1 billion or 800 million, whatever it was. Yeah, I love what I do. One of the secrets, Brian, I bet you can relate to this. People say, you get paid a lot of money to speak, and I really don't. I haven't raised my fee in a long time. It's still it's going to 12.5. It's been 9,500 for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But compared to what to digging ditches, that's pretty good,
Yeah.
And are you going to raise your fee and so on? And I always think to myself, the secret that they don't know is I would pay them if I had to
Yeah.
get it in front of 5,000 or 6,000 people, 10,000, whatever, and be the center of attention for a few hours and make some money. We sell books and stuff at the back of the room. But I just love what I do so much. I'm a people person. I'm one of those
Mm-hmm.
people who, although I don't want to sit in an airport for 6 hours, I could. I just find the concourse that's got the most traffic on it, and I just sit there and study them. I
Mm-hmm.
love looking at people. I love talking to them. You and I were talking before we came on.
I told my wife the same thing. I said, you can get, she said, because I was telling her something, we were in a store or something, and I was telling her something that I had heard. And she said, well, how did you pick up on that? And I said, I just listened to conversation.
Yeah.
I just, if people are going to talk out loud within earshot of me hearing them, then I can find information that I can use that helps me, either. I think they were talking about like a road close. There was a marathon. I was in Virginia Beach last week for vacation.
Oh,
they were talking about a marathon
in Virginia Beach.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And Ben, they were talking about a marathon that was coming and these road closures. And I thought, okay, we need to kind of get prepared. And so from that conversation, I started asking some questions about, what time do we need to leave and things like that. And you're right, is that, Ben, it feels like companies have said, let me go here for a minute. Companies have said, we can do these events that we've always done live, these trainings and development seminars and things where we get everybody together and we it's a big part of our marketing budget and things like that. They've said, we can do this virtually. And what they never can replicate are the conversations in the hallways that people
Coffee
learn
breaks,
things.
lunch,
Exactly.
dinner.
I learn more things in breaks than I do in the trainings
Right.
that I go to, because you talk to people and people are they're like, hey, what do you do that's different? Oh, I do this. What do you do? I do that. And then you start getting that information and things like that. When you get to go in front of a room, I want to ask you this. What makes you nervous? Because I've sang since I was a little kid. I've sang in front of people. I've done ministry and preaching and things like that. I don't get nervous a lot anymore. A little bit sometimes. I think that's ingrained in you. But what makes you, does anything make you nervous anymore? All the speaking you've done over the years, does anything make you nervous anymore?
No. 5,000 plus paid appearances, probably another 5,000 for service organizations in prisons and so on. Literally nothing. But I got inoculated early on in one of my very first paid ones, and very early in my career. I started making a lot of money. Zig and I had joined a multi-level marketing company, and I was introduced, you're too young to know who he is, but Ern Westmore was the dean of Hollywood makeup artists. Ask your mother about him and she will know who he is, and that he used to be on the Art Linkletter show doing makeovers out in the audience. Well, he was our director of beauty and fashion, vice president of, and he was nice enough to take me to lunch, went to the Carnegie Deli for the first time in New York. A little Southern boy, that's an experience when they begin yelling at you because you don't order fast enough. And while we were eating, Ern was taking these nitroglycerin tablets. And I didn't know that's what they were at first, but I finally asked, and he had a heart condition. He said, if I don't take these on a regular basis, I'll fall over dead. And so on. So we finished up, and as we're walking back to the Park Sheraton Hotel, he said, Ben, would you mind if I introduce you tonight? I'm going on in front of you. I said, I would be honored. Now, I'm nervous. One, it's the probably the first crowd of that size, about 5,000 people. Early in my career, I'm meeting Ern Westmore. When I called my mother to tell her Ern Westmore was going to be on with me and he was going to introduce me, she wouldn't believe me.
And by the way, Art Linkletter was a fantastic talk show host, hosted some game shows. Art Linkletter was extremely popular in those days.
Oh, yeah, and a motivational speaker, traveled with American Sales Masters and so on. So anyway, I said, yeah. I walk into the room, Ern's up, he's already working, and it's about 6 steps up to the stage. And I'm thinking, okay, when he introduces me, how do I not fall down? I look to my left, there's 5,000 people stacked up in 2 or 3 two balconies plus the main floor. And I'm thinking, I'm going to run. I haven't been introduced yet. I go up to my room. Nobody will know. Ern might have an awkward moment or two while all this is running through my mind.
Well, he's a professional. He'll be able to get through it, obviously.
Yeah, he'll cover it. We'll be glad to have the extra time. I had it justified. I was ready to go. And then I heard him say, I had lunch today with a young man who, mark my words, is going to wind up as president of this company, which was right. He was just a year and a half early. And then the spot, I'm thinking I can still go. He hasn't said my name. Spotlight swings over, I mean, a show business spotlight, and it's on me. And I'm thinking, okay, you should have left here about 30 seconds ago.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, here's my newest friend. It's Benjamin Franklin Gay the Third. And before the D on third was fully out of his mouth, he dropped dead on stage. Oh, wow. And I don't mean like he fainted. He looked like he'd been shot with an elephant gun, just boom, flat on his back. So I ran up on the stage, did my is there a doctor in the house thing I'd seen done in movies. And somebody came up and somebody called an ambulance and so on. They worked on him for a few minutes. Again, there's 5,000 people looking, and I'm standing there watching all this with no help. And finally, the guy looks up at me, the fireman, and says, sir, he's dead. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. And they picked him up, put him on a Stokes litter, that's that basket, on wheels, and start rolling him towards the door. And there's this deadly silence. I've never heard 5,000 people that quiet. And I thought to myself, there's a spotlight on you. You're next up. You better say something. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, I was honored to have lunch today with the great Ern Westmore. And I grew up watching him on the Art Linkletter show and so on. To have lunch with him is just marvelous. And I saw him taking the heart pills. And I said, Ern, if you had to go, how would you like to go? And he told me today at lunch that he would like to go in front of a large crowd talking about beauty, fashion, and makeup. Ladies and gentlemen, he just got his wish. Let's give him one last standing ovation.
Wow.
Brian, they almost tore the room apart. They told me later they could hear it out in the lobby, up to the first floor.
Ben, that is incredible.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton here. The new year is upon us, and you may be sitting there thinking, hey, I would really love to pay off some debt, or I would like to save for that dream vacation. Maybe you want to buy a new car. Whatever it is you want to do financially in the coming year, let me give you a great piece of intentional encouragement and something to think about that might help you do it. Products for Profit. Now, this is a course taught by my good friend Joe Hart, who's been a guest on the Intentional Encourager podcast and has told his story how reselling changed his life. And you know what, folks? It could do the same thing for you too. It's really simple. Reselling is basically buying a product and then reselling it online for more money. And Joe is going to take you through the steps and show you how to do this either part-time or maybe, as some of his students have done, take this full-time as well. Go to coachjoe89.gumroad.com/L/premium PFP. And oh, by the way, this group is going to help you find leads of products that are profitable right now, give you all kinds of great intentional encouragement, and you're going to be surrounded by a community of people that are going to want to see you be successful in the reselling game. Again, go to coachjoe89.gumroad.com/L/premium PFP and tell him you heard about it on the Intentional Encourager podcast. And now let's get back to more great conversation here on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Because you see this traumatic event in front of you. It is bone chilling when something happens like that. My paternal grandfather passed away after he stood up to pray in church and collapsed and died of a heart issue. My father was 4 at the time, and my wife's grandfather, who was directly in front of him, had his head bowed and heard him hit the floor and turned around. And that's something you never forget. My mother-in-law told me about that on my wife and I on our first date. She told me about that. That's something you never forget. How do you, and thank you for leading us there, because how do you in that moment keep your composure to people are watching this in horror. They're watching this man. Paramedics are working on him, fire, EMT. They're working on this man. There's chaos. The room just suddenly filled with chaos.
Yep.
How do you restore calm in a chaotic moment? And you're having lunch with this man. You look up to this man. He's spending time with you. And in front of you, he takes his last breath. And you're recalling that moment so calmly and clearly and vividly as though it happened yesterday. Let me go here. What was that impact on you from that moment on, seeing that in front of your eyes?
Well, it taught me two things besides the philosophical and the religious and everything. Speaking of religious, when I realized I had to talk and I have a dead body at my feet, I said, Jesus, please help me. Give me the words, or as Stephen Fetchit used to say, feet don't fail me now.
Yes.
I'm thinking, tongue don't fail me now. And out came what I just told you I said. That was totally spontaneous. But there were two other great lessons there. One was scripting. I was there to give an opportunity meeting. There was 5,000 people in the room. About half of them were distributors, half of them were prospects, so 2,500. And our closing rate in a group situation like that would be about 40% probably. That night we closed 90% because it was such a boom type thing. I've kidded over the years and said, if you want to have a really great closing rate, get somebody very famous to introduce you who's willing to drop dead on stage.
Yeah.
And then follow him. And so I was supposed to say, if he'd said, ladies and gentlemen, here's Ben Gay III, and walked off the stage, I was supposed to say, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ben Gay. I'm a general distributor with Holiday Magic Cosmetics. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's special meeting. And then I would go into a 37-minute word-for-word presentation, show a business film. At the end of the film, it said, turn to the person who brought you here, ask how you can get started in Holiday Magic. Lights slowly come up. Everybody gets out their legal pads, and they, on the script, start, drawing the circles that go with network marketing. And so when the doors flapped, when they went through the doors with the Stokes litter, flap, 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 that was sort of my signal. Back to you, Ben. So I turned to them and I said, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ben Gay. I'm a general distributor. And I went into the word for word script. And that's when we closed 90% of 2,500 prospects in the room. So I learned, keep calm, trust in God. If you ask him for help, he'll come forward. He did for me that night. Keep calm. I learned a real lesson about scripting. If I was still winging it like I did in the early days, because I didn't want to bother to learn the scripts, if I was still winging it, this wouldn't be an inspirational story, it'd be a nightmare story. And I also learned to care about the audience. It dawned on me that Ern died, the spotlight's on me, but all those people are thinking about themselves. So what can I give them in this awkward moment that would help them? And so those are sort of the three great lessons I learned from that. Somebody asked me one day in a seminar not too long ago in Las Vegas, you worked with Dr. Napoleon Hill. What are the three things that he taught you that meant the most? And I hate questions like that. He taught me 500 things, but I didn't know they were going to ask. And I'm supposed to come up with three. And I did my little look up like I was cranking my neck, but what I was saying was, Jesus, I need a little help here. Mm-hmm. And it was, my tongue said, integrity, absolute integrity in all things. Focus, Dr. Hill was forever saying to me, focus, Ben, focus. When he saw me, I have a shiny object syndrome, and I'm easily distracted. And then, or if I'm not disciplined, and then take action. And he had taught me that several times the hard way. Take action. So integrity, focus, action. That night with Ern, it was a very similar situation. I asked for help and I got it.
Yeah.
And scripting, and so therefore when I'm doing sales training, so I don't want to be bound by a script. It's all I can do, Brian, to keep from going for the throat.
Yeah, exactly.
If you've been in selling over 30 days, you're on a script. You tend to say the same thing in the same situations anyway. So we're not discussing, are you on a script or should you be on a script? We're discussing, are you on a quality script that was well thought out, tested, and proven? And, they say, well, I can always tell when somebody's on a script. I say, you must not have much fun at the movies or while watching television.
Well, it's the ability, Ben, it's being in sales, pushing 30 years myself, the biggest thing that changed for me was when I learned, because I'm a lot like you, I get distracted easily. The biggest thing that changed my selling was when I learned to look my customer in the eye and keep eye contact. Because at that point, the script went from here to here. It went from my head to my heart and then out of my mouth, looking that person in the eye. Because when you look somebody in the eye, it's hard to deceive them. It's very hard to deceive them. Most human beings, even great liars, when they're forced to look someone in the eye, they can't do it. They can't lie.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard. Someone you care about, it's very hard to deceive them. But that changed the way that I sold when I began to keep and make eye contact. Because now I feel to your point, what Dr. Hill shared with you, when you look someone in the eye, integrity kicks in naturally and focus kicks in naturally. And through your eye contact, you're transferring action. And so I love what you said there. I've got to go here quickly because you mentioned someone that I absolutely adore, a hero of mine. I still gain encouragement, inspiration from this man. And this man's son, Tom, is a friend of mine. And that's Zig Ziglar, the late, great Zig Ziglar, arguably our country's greatest. Now, in my book, our country's greatest motivational speaker. Zig could just do it. And no disrespect to anyone else. But in my mind, my belief, the greatest that's ever been. I want you to talk for a few minutes about your relationship with Zig and some lessons that you learned from Zig, either privately or publicly, that you want to share. Because Zig has the greatest and forgive me for being a little long-winded here, Zig has the greatest quote that, and I use it all the time, Ben. Zig said, "Encouragement is the fuel that powers hope." And to me, that is just Zig said had two or three quotes that I really. Encouragement is the fuel that powers hope. You can have anything in life you want if you'll just help enough people get what they want. And those two quotes, till the day I die, will always be a part of me. Please talk for a few minutes about the impact that Zig had on you.
Well, Zig was 18 years older than I was. He was in the Navy the day I was born. So there was a generational spread, but when you're young, you're not aware of that. None of us were old yet. The first old person I worked with was Dr. Napoleon Hill. He was 84. I was 25 when he came to work for me. But in Zig's case, I was putting a wife through nursing school, and I wasn't making a whole lot of money, and nursing school was surprisingly expensive, I discovered.
Yes, still is.
Yeah, and the equipment, the things she had to have, and so on. So I started looking for a better situation. And I picked up the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on Wednesday, September 15th, on the corner or the fork of Peachtree and West Peachtree, in a phone booth, right next to a phone booth. And I flipped through the want ads, and I couldn't find anything I was qualified to do. I got all the way to psychologist and stuff. But I couldn't do anything. I couldn't type. They didn't let boys take typing in those days, or you were thought odd if you did. So it dawned on me that I pretty much was skillless except for the natural ability to talk to people. I was voted wittiest in high school. In fact, I was so witty, I was thrown out of 2 high schools before I graduated from the 3rd one. So that's witty. I mean,
see, now if you had been born 60 years or 70 years later, you could have gone on TikTok and used your wit to
probably so.
Your YouTube,
Become
yeah,
you would have
been an internet superstar, exactly.
Well, I went into this phone booth and finally I saw business opportunities. I didn't know what a business opportunity was. I'd never heard the term, but it was a separate section. And under that, I saw a little ad that said, if you know anything about marketing plans and want to make more money, dial this number. So I dialed the number because, although I didn't know what a marketing plan was, nor a business opportunity, I did want to make more money. Mm-hmm. So I dialed the number, and this guy answered. His name was Bill Dempsey, became a dear friend. And I began interviewing him because I was Ben Gay with Brown Gay Food Brokerage Company, skipping over the part that I wasn't the Gay and Brown Gay Food Brokerage. That was my father. And about 5 minutes into my interview of him, he said, excuse me, stop. He said, Mr. Gay, I'm not the man standing in a phone booth once answering want ads. Where are you? And I told him. He said, you're about 2 blocks from my office. Be standing in front of my desk in 10 minutes or don't ever dial this number again. And he hung up. It slammed down the phone. So my running buddy, turned out to be the best salesperson I've ever personally worked with, Jimmy Rucker, came around. He also worked for my father at the time. And I jumped in the car like Robin in a Batman movie. And I said, let's go, 1447 West Beach Street. He said, what's going to go on? I said, we're going to be rich. So we drove 2 blocks to the place, ran up I don't think I wanted to wait for the elevator, ran up to the 3rd floor, walked in, and I said to the receptionist, hi, I'm Ben Gay, and we're here for a noon appointment for whatever. And from behind me, I heard this laugh and a Southern accent, Ben Gay. And I turn around, there's this curly-headed guy sitting there, and I said, hi, my name is Ben Gay. What's yours? He said, Zig Ziglar. I said, with a name like Zig Ziglar, you're laughing at Ben Gay? You got to be kidding me. And he laughed, and I laughed, and he'd answered the same ad. We went in to the meeting together with Jimmy, listened to the same presentation I gave in front of the crowd the night Ern died, listened to the opportunity meeting, and all 3 of us signed up. And Zig had not yet had a big hit. He was still peddling cookware in Columbia, South Carolina. That day was the start of Zig's introduction to big money, as it was mine and Jimmy Rucker's. So that's how we met. And he was hard to dislike. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody was Zig's friend immediately. So we became buddies, thanks to him. And I watched him on stage. He didn't know the meeting yet, but he knew how to speak. And he got up and dazzled them all with, I used to kid him. I said, he dazzled us with his lounge act. He could have been a stand-up comedian, you know, and did biscuits, fleas, and pump handles.
Even when he was in his older years, I saw him in 2008, and I shared this with Tom, and you can go back and listen to the podcast that I've had with Tom Ziglar, but I shared with Tom this. I said, Tom, your dad was battling dementia in 2008. And I said, your sister was with him. And she so beautifully led him to, and if you've ever been around someone with dementia,
Mm-hmm.
You lead them to familiar places.
Yep.
And when she led him to those familiar places, you saw Zig come back and be Zig and captivate and mesmerize, and just those phrases and those the couple of the phrases that I used a few minutes ago, Ben.
Yeah.
It just came back, and it was powerful that in that moment his daughter so lovingly led him to those familiar things that you saw all those years ago. You started to see those things develop. I want to ask you this real quick. What did you see in private of Zig that most people didn't see in public? Because a lot of times Ben, you know, when you're on stage and things like that, you're in front of people. You know, I'll have conversations with people that are dear friends of mine that I might not have in a business setting, just because I'm more comfortable around them. But what did you see in private that most people might not have seen in public about Zig?
A raucous sense of humor, and a little bawdier than his image in later years was. The way I explain it to people is I knew Zig before he was Saint Zig, when he was just one of the guys and we were all trying to make money. I don't know if he drank in the later years, but I knew him when he drank after the meetings in nightclubs and so on. It wasn't all biblical. It was a salesman who could speak on his feet quickly, and who everybody loved. Here's a little secret. I'm a good salesman. Zig was a good salesman, but Zig's closer was a guy named Mel Lanius. My closer was a guy named Jimmy Rucker. Zig more than I was, but we were the front acts. You know, hi, I'm Ben Gay. Zig with his pump handles and stuff. But when it came to sit down with somebody and get them to turn over their money, Mel was better than Zig was, and Jimmy was better than I was. But we complimented each other. Jimmy, I don't think, ever gave an opportunity to meet. He may, but I don't recall it. And I never saw Mel at the front of the room. He was just lurking in the background. But and Zig, probably the business side of him might surprise people. When you're that jovial and happy and all, people sometimes don't take you as seriously as they should. Zig called me and a gentleman named Merle Frazier, who's one of my original mentors and still a good friend to this day, called us one day and announced, this is business Zig. He wanted to move to Dallas. He wanted us all to go with him, or the two of us go with him, and join a big church. And I don't mean in a sacrilegious way. It was just, if you're going to be in church anyway, which he was, might as well join a big one and use it as a center of influence. And I think Merle went for a while, not an official move, but he went. I had things going on in my life where I couldn't. And so that wasn't one of my options. But I saw Zig plot out, like he would tell you in goal setting, do this, set this objective, do this, and so on. And he did, and started becoming Zig Ziglar. There's a difference between that and the guy I met at 1447 West Peachtree Street in 1965. There he was funny, but he wasn't yet a superstar, which he became. The other thing, in looking back, when people ask me questions like that, usually I have to sort of skirt around it because there's something bad that you don't want to say. For instance, if XYZ guy was your hero, you built everything you knew around him and so on, and I knew something terrible about him, I would never tell you.
Absolutely.
Because that would discount the lessons he shared with you.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. Have you ever wanted to live a bucket list life? Or if you're a business owner, have you ever wanted to incentivize your team in unbelievable ways? I have got just the thing for you. You need to contact my friend Brad Norwood with Dream It Pro Professional Events. Brad's been a guest here on the Intentional Encourager podcast, and I can tell you he has helped numerous companies achieve unbelievable things through experienced travel. Experiences are what people want. They want to know how they can live incredible bucket list lives as well, too. And Brad can help you with both of those things. I can't give you any better encouragement than to give Brad and his team a call right now at 479-466-6907 or go to www.dreamitpro.com. And when you get there, click on events and you are going to see some unbelievable once-in-a-lifetime experiences. And I promise you this, unlike plaques, awards, trophies, things like that, experiences and trips like these don't burn up in a fire. Again, go to www.dreamitpro.com today. And now let's get back to more great conversation here on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Well, again, everyone has things in their life that they're not proud of.
Right. I certainly do.
Me too. I'll be the first. I will raise both hands.
Yeah.
And again, you are very careful about telling everything you know. My dad always said, "Don't tell everything you know."
Yep.
And my dad, in later years, was a pastor of a church and things like that. And I didn't share a lot of things that I knew privately that happened to my dad. Because I didn't want to stain his memory. And it's not, Ben, it's not really a stain as it is. I hope when I pass away and my son gets to carry on and talk about his father, I think to some degree I might say to him, don't hold back, because it's a very there's connective tissue in those moments in life where you were less than perfect. Because everybody has been there. Everybody has had those moments where they were far from perfect. And I think I would say to him, look, it's okay to tell some of those things that don't paint your dad in the rosiest of pictures, because then people would say, well, man, I kind of struggled with the same thing. I kind of, I had that same issue, and I never told anybody because I was afraid of retribution and repercussions and things like that. And Ben, that's why we do the podcast, is because everybody has those things in their life that they've overcome or they've gone through and things like that shape them. And people say, I thought I was the only one that went through that. I thought I was the only one that dealt with that. I thought I was the only one that did that. And so, no, my admiration for a man like Zig is all the people that he helped. My admiration for a man like you all the people that you've helped. Because again, that's an era that's gone. Everybody wants to be an influencer, but no one wants to have impact.
Everybody wants to go to heaven. Nobody wants to die.
Exactly. Exactly. Ben, let me ask you this, and I want to be respectful of the time and your time and the audience's time. We're going to have a part 2 with Ben Gay III. We're just going to have to do a two-parter at some point, because there's so much good things that we could pull out. What's the one thing, if you look back at that time in your life, the greatest business lesson that you learned that you still carry to this day from that time? Because you talked about you talked about your father being in the food brokerage business. That's the business I started in. Was in food brokerage. Yeah, I was a 22-year-old kid that a food broker out of Louisville, Kentucky hired. That was my first sales job. Was food.
You were retail, detail.
I was in food service. Yeah, and so, but again, I still remember a lesson that my boss taught me almost 30 years ago now. Treat everybody the same. You never know when the dishwasher is going to be your buyer. So what was that greatest lesson that you still, all those years later, that you learned from that time let me make sure I get this right, from 1447 West Peachtree Street?
Suite 300.
Suite 300.
Yeah. All of the things that you're supposed to say when you get a question like that: honesty, integrity, treat everybody right, make them feel important. I'm a student of history, and I've never read a history book when they're talking about a great person, man or woman, where somewhere in the book you'll find somebody saying, when I was with him or her, I felt as if I was the most important person in the world. Eye contact, total focus on that person to the exclusion of everybody. If I'm talking to you in a meeting room, there's 5,000 other people there. The time we're together, there's 2 people in the room. There may be 4,900 others milling around, but there's just the 2 of us. So things like that are very important, and the honesty and so on. But when I think back, I don't mean to whine and complain, because I was president of the largest direct sales multi-level marketing company in the world at 25. So it's not like I was a late bloomer. Mm-hmm. But throughout my career, I wish I had gotten serious sooner. Probably I couldn't have been president of the company at 20, because that would have just been goofy. I had a flat top, remnants of acne, and a cheap sport coat. But I could have been there a year or 2 earlier, and I could have learned a lot more from the people around me. Brian, I was surrounded by the Ziglars. They all work for us, which I used to love to do when Zig was in earshot. They said, "Do you know Zig Ziglar?" I said, "Yeah, he works for me." Because by then I was president of the company, and he was our top distributor. So it was true, but you had to stretch it a little bit to believe it.
Absolutely.
But people say to me, "How'd you meet Og Mandino?" And I said, "I'm not sure, but I think I left my office to go to the men's room and bumped into him in the hallway." How'd you meet Dr. Napoleon Hill? He was brought to my office. How'd you meet Richard Nixon? He was there looking for money for his campaign. My boss, William Patrick, had run against him for governor of California. How'd you meet Ronald Reagan? He came by to pick up money while running, for this and that. So I accidentally got myself in the catbird seat. You go back to that era and pick any name. In fact, I sent you a list of people that I'd work with. You go back to that era, name any name. I can tell you that I met them. They either worked for me or with me, or we hired them to do, as a speaker in seminars. Anybody. I wish, and I learned a lot from them, but I wish I had been like a laser beam. You are talking to Og Mandino, suck it up, suck him dry, get everything you can out of him. Where maybe I was a little too casual about stuff like that, and maybe a little too caught up in me. I was Ben Gay. I was the one paying Og Mandino.
Right.
So a little bit of that crept in, but I would have gotten serious sooner, and I would have stayed serious sooner. To a degree, I was sort of like a fraternity guy and I was only in the fraternity for 3 weeks. I was elected president of my freshman class in college, by the way, but I was never sworn in because the inauguration was 3 weeks after the election, and by then I dropped out of school. So I think there should be a law. You have to have the inauguration the day of the election, so that you could say you were sworn in as president. But I would have gotten a lot more serious about all the opportunities and events that were around me. I was raised 2 blocks out the front gate of East Lake Country Club in Atlanta, Bobby Jones' home course.
Mm-hmm.
The people that I hung out with, and I don't mean I hung out with my father, who was hanging out with the chairman of the board of Coca-Cola, the founders of Home Depot. Almost all the top 500 companies had at least a regional office in Atlanta, and with that regional office would come membership in East Lake. So my comfort zone was set high. And the only rule was, if I went into the men's grill or the crystal dining room with my father, was you can sit there, just be quiet. Don't speak unless spoken to, and if spoken to, answer yes or no. We don't want to hear speeches from a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I walked around the course with Arnold Palmer at the Ryder Cup. Bobby Jones, by the time I knew him, was crippled and on canes or so on. But I've stood next to Bobby Jones for hours watching golf tournaments and so on. All those wonderful opportunities, and they affected me. They set my comfort zones high. When all of a sudden I was groveling, trying to figure out how to put my wife through nursing school, my head was saying, it's the reason I got out the paper. My head was saying, this isn't you. You know, where are the nice cars, the nice house, the country club membership, and so on. What happened? My comfort zone had been set high. I wish I had, in the early days, while caddying for somebody, talked to him all the way around the course and become aggravating, probably, but talked to him all the way around the course. I wish that when I met Og Mandino, it was, hey, Og, let's go have lunch. You know, sitting down in my office and say, talk to me. What should I know? He saved my life, literally, by the way. What should I know that you know, and so on. So that would have been it, and a little less partying. I drank too much, partied too much. We were all having a great time, and in most multi-level marketing companies. I'm doing some work with one now where everybody looks like a banker. When I came up, they came off milk trucks, and they were Arthur Murray dance instructors, you know, hustlers, movers, shakers, who never made any money. So that's probably the most serious thing, above and beyond integrity and all those things. But my father used to get aggravated when I would talk about Napoleon Hill taught me integrity. He said, what happened in our house if you lied? That's why I got knocked on my rear end. He said, exactly. I was teaching you integrity.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So,
my dad had a zero tolerance policy against lying as well, too. And,
yeah.
you know.
But I learned all that from him, but it doesn't set in sometimes. I bet it's true with your dad till you hear it from somebody else. I doubt Zig taught you hardly anything that your father hadn't said, maybe less humorously, but hadn't said to you.
Well, I wish you were talking about the people that you've gotten to be around in your lifetime. That's the biggest regret I have in the last 10 years is I've met a lot of amazing people that I would love to pick up the phone and call my dad and say, hey, guess who I had on my podcast today? Guess who I got to interact with today? Guess who and Ben, the world, I love how you brought us there. The world since the 1960s and the 1970s and the 1980s has gotten much smaller. And the people that we can interact with today, it's incredible the people that you can interact with today. That you know, the ability to connect with people has never been greater than it is right now. And so, listen, we're going to do a part 2. I want to be respectful of your time and the audience's time. we will do a part 2. But tell folks real quick how they can get connected to you, get your resources, the things that you have, your book, The Closers. Let folks know how they can connect with you, Ben.
Well, if they're in selling, many of them, most of them might already have The Closers, but this is the first book in the series. We're part 5. This is part 1. Part 5 is at the printer as we speak, and we've got another 15 or 20 in the pipeline. But this is very high tech. It's scotch taped on the back of a piece of packing carton. Go to store, the website's fine, but go to stores.ebay.com/Ronzoni Books, RONZONE Books. And there you can get all my material with special pricing and free shipping, which you can't even get at my website. So that's how you stay in touch. Want to shoot me an email and become friends? It's BFG3, as in Benjamin Franklin Gay III, BFG3 at DirectCon, DIRECTCON, as in November, .net. And I personally review it. It's getting, with this great connectivity you just referred to, it's getting harder and harder, but I still look at every email that comes in. It's the first hour or so of my day, usually. And I believe in close personal contact. You were just touching on something that's really close to my heart. It took me over 5,000 paid appearances, plus, as I told you, probably another 5,000 free ones, and or other people's seminars, to talk to and shake hands with 2.5 million people. I estimate. I may not have shaken all their hands, but I was in a room with them, and we could have 2.5 million people. You and I, with about a week's planning, can talk to 2.5 million people a week from today, just from your hotel room, if you're still there, and me from my office. So that's amazing. I'm always asked, how has selling changed? I said, selling hadn't changed at all. The sheepdogs are faster and more agile and can round up more people. But when the dust settles, it's just like what Zig and I taught years ago. People want to know what's in it for me.
Oh, yeah.
And do I know, like, and trust you? And that's what the Yankee peddlers were doing 300 years ago, and the silk traders were doing 1,000 years ago. But the technology has made everything easier.
Yeah, it's still all about connection, Ben. It's still, and I said this in my book, and I'll say it till the day I die. People buy connection before they ever make a transaction.
Yep.
You have to connect. You have to connect. You have to connect. We will do a part 2 because there's so much more that I want to pull, more conversation that I want to pull. But again, I am so grateful that you joined me today on this episode. And again, connect with Ben at BFG3 at DirectCon.net. That's DirectCon. Shoot him an email. And again, let him know you heard him on the Intentional Encourager podcast. But Ben, thank you so very much for joining me on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Thank you, Brian. My honor.
My thanks as always to producer Bryce Sexton and technical advisor Matt Means. And of course, the ultimate thanks goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, who provides intentional encouragement every day through his word. If you're not subscribed to the Intentional Encourager podcast, hit the subscribe button wherever you get podcasts so you don't miss an exciting episode where you can get encouraged and stay encouraged. And remember, anyone, anywhere, at any time, any place can be an intentional encourager.